Sir Alaric, decorated knight and war hero, returns to his hometown of Oakvale after years fighting in the cursed battlefield of Grimhollow. The townspeople celebrate his return with a feast, though Alaric feels disconnected from their joy, haunted by the horrors he witnessed. As night falls and Alaric retires to his newly granted manor house, he notices something odd in the candlelight. His shadow briefly moves independently, reaching toward a nearby dagger when Alaric reaches for wine. Alaric dismisses it as exhaustion, but as he prepares for bed, he catches his reflection, smiling in the mirror, while his own face remains grim. The psychological toll of war seems to be manifesting in disturbing ways as Alaric tries to reintegrate into civilian life. During a formal ceremony where Lord Edric presents Alaric with lands and titles for his service, Alaric's shadow suddenly freezes while he bows, remaining upright against the wall. Only Alaric notices this abnormality, causing him to stumble through his acceptance speech. That night, Alaric awakens to whispers. His shadow is speaking, revealing that Lady Marianne, Lord Edric's wife, is plotting against her husband. The shadow's voice is like Alaric's but distorted, colder. Alaric tries to convince himself it's a dream, but the next day he overhears Lady Marianne discussing exactly what the shadow predicted. Alaric begins to realise something supernatural has attached itself to him during his time in Grimhollow, something that knows secrets it shouldn't be possible to know. Alaric seeks answers by visiting the town's archives, researching the history of Grimhollow and the battle he fought there. The elderly archivist, Cedric, helps reluctantly, warning that some knowledge is dangerous. While researching, Alaric's shadow stretches across multiple scrolls, seemingly reading independently. Cedric notices and grows pale but says nothing. That evening, the shadow whispers more secrets about Cedric's forbidden research, about a servant's theft, about a neighbour's infidelity. When Alaric confronts his shadow, demanding to know what it wants, the shadow simply replies, "Freedom." Alaric decides he must understand what has happened to him, despite the fear of being labelled mad, and begins questioning survivors from his battalion about strange occurrences during the battle. Following rumours from his former soldiers, Alaric journeys to the edge of the Blackbriar Forest to find Moira, an old witch who reportedly understands curses from Grimhollow. Moira lives in a cottage surrounded by plants that grow away from the sun rather than toward it. Upon seeing Alaric, she immediately recognises his affliction. She explains that in Grimhollow, the barrier between worlds thinned, allowing aspects of the Shadow Realm to attach to soldiers. Alaric's shadow is no longer his own, but an entity from that realm seeking to fully cross over. Moira reveals that as the shadow grows stronger, it will eventually be able to physically manifest and commit acts while Alaric sleeps, potentially crimes that would be attributed to him. She mentions the legendary Sunless Well as the only place where such a shadow can be bound back to its owner, but warns that many who seek it never return. Alaric returns to his ancestral home, a long-abandoned manor he's avoided since childhood, due to the mysterious deaths of his parents. The shadow seems stronger here, stretching to impossible lengths across the walls. In the dusty study, Alaric discovers his father's journals, revealing that his father, also a knight, had fought in Grimhollow decades earlier and returned changed. The final entries become increasingly paranoid, with mentions of the shadow knowing too much before ending abruptly. Alaric realizes his father likely suffered the same affliction and may have taken his own life to stop the shadow from taking control. While in the manor, Alaric experiences a vivid flashback to the battlefield where he was wounded, the moment when darkness seeped into his blood and his shadow first separated from him. The chapter ends with Alaric finding a hidden map in his father's possessions, with markings that might lead to the Sunless Well. Following his father's map, Alaric explores the ancient catacombs beneath Oakvale's cathedral, where the boundary between light and shadow blurs. His shadow now moves completely independently, scouting ahead through narrow passages where Alaric cannot fit. In the deepest chamber, Alaric discovers wall carvings depicting the Shadow Realm and its parasitic entities. The carvings show knights from centuries past battling their own shadows, with the Sunless Well depicted as a place where worlds converge. Father Thomas, the elderly cathedral keeper, discovers Alaric in the Forbidden Area and reveals he knows about shadow entities. He explains that the Sunless Well exists at the convergence of ley lines, where neither sun nor moon casts shadows. Thomas provides Alaric with an ancient text written in forgotten runes that may help locate the well, but warns that the shadow will fight harder as Alaric gets closer to binding it. Unable to decipher the runes, Alaric reluctantly visits Elena, a young scholar with a reputation for understanding ancient languages. Initially skeptical of his story, Elena becomes fascinated when she witnesses Alaric's shadow move independently, reaching for a book she was about to touch. Elena agrees to help translate the text but insists on accompanying Alaric on his quest, revealing that her brother returned from Grimhollow with similar symptoms before disappearing. As they work together, Alaric's shadow whispers Eleanor's secrets to him, her fear of being discovered practicing forbidden magic, her unrequited love for a married nobleman. Alaric refuses to use these secrets against her, earning Elena's trust. The shadow grows agitated at their alliance, and that night, while Alaric sleeps, it partially manifests physically for the first time, knocking over Elena's inkwell to destroy her translations. Alaric and Elena travel to the Ravencrest Library, a repository of forbidden knowledge guarded by the secretive Order of the Veil. Using his status as a war hero, Alaric gains entry, though the Shadow's increasingly erratic behaviour, reaching for scholars' throats, writing strange symbols on foggy windows makes their research difficult. Master Librarian Thorn becomes suspicious and confronts them, revealing he recognises the Shadow's nature. He offers crucial information about the Sunless Well's location in exchange for a vial of Alaric's blood, claiming it contains traces of Shadow Realm essence valuable for the Order's research. Elena warns against the deal, but Alaric, desperate for answers, agrees. Thorn reveals the well lies within the Abyssal Marsh, a place where reality itself bends. As they leave with this knowledge, Alaric's shadow grows noticeably stronger from the bloodletting, now able to physically touch and move small objects even in daylight. Returning to Oakvale to prepare for their journey to the Abyssal Marsh, Alaric and Eleanor find the town in turmoil. A series of strange crimes has occurred, secrets revealed, rivalries exposed, and a murder where the victim was strangled, but no footprints were found at the scene except the victim's own. Lord Edric summons Alaric, revealing that witnesses reported seeing a figure resembling Alaric near each crime scene, though Alaric knows he was elsewhere. Elena realizes the shadow has begun manifesting physically while Alaric sleeps, using the secrets it has gathered to create chaos. When confronted privately, the shadow speaks directly to both of them, threatening to frame Alaric for worse crimes if they continue their quest. That night, Eleanor creates a magical barrier around Alaric's room to prevent the shadow from leaving. But by morning, they discover Lady Marian has been attacked, and she identifies Alaric as her assailant. With town guards seeking to arrest him for Lady Marianne's attack, Alaric and Eleanor are forced to flee Oakvale. Lord Edric, once Alaric's patron, leads the pursuit himself, convinced Alaric has been corrupted by dark forces from Grim Hollow. During their escape through Blackbriar Forest, Alaric's shadow begins physically manifesting more frequently, sometimes creating a second silhouette that moves independently beside them. They seek refuge with Moira the Witch, who performs a ritual to temporarily weaken the shadow's power. The ritual reveals that the entity calls itself Malachi, a shadow being who has been trying to cross fully into the physical world for centuries, attaching itself to warriors from Grim Hollow. Moira warns that by the next full moon, Malachi will be strong enough to fully materialize and permanently separate from Alaric, becoming an independent entity that can frame Alaric for unthinkable crimes while building its own physical form from the darkness it consumes. With time running short, Moira gives them protective amulets and directions to the Abyssal Marsh. Alaric and Elena journey toward the Abyssal Marsh, pursued by Lord Edric's men and increasingly tormented by Malachi. The shadow now regularly manifests as a semi-physical duplicate of Alaric, visible to both of them, mocking their efforts and revealing painful secrets from Eleanor's past about her brother's fate. When they make camp, Alaric awakens to find Eleanor gone and tracks her to a clearing where she stands transfixed by Malachi, who has taken on a more solid form. The shadow reveals it has been feeding Elena information about her brother in exchange for her sabotaging certain protective measures. Alaric confronts Elena, who admits her deception but explains she only wanted to learn if her brother could be saved from his own shadow. Their argument allows Malachi to grow stronger, feeding on their conflict. When Lord Edric's men ambush them, Malachi fully manifests for the first time, killing 2 guards before disappearing into the forest. Eleanor is captured in the chaos while Alaric barely escapes, now hunted as a murderer and separated from his only ally. Alaric continues alone toward the Abyssal Marsh, his mental state deteriorating as Malachi's voice constantly torments him, showing him visions of Elena being tortured by Lord Edric for information. Alaric can no longer sleep, knowing Malachi grows stronger when he does. After days of exhaustion, Alaric collapses in a remote village where he's taken in by an elderly couple. Upon waking, Alaric discovers the old man dead, apparently murdered in the night, and the woman accusing him with terror in her eyes. Though Alaric knows Malachi is responsible, he flees before more villagers arrive. In his despair, Alaric contemplates ending his life to stop Malachi from hurting others, just as his father likely did. At his lowest moment, he encounters Cedric the Archivist, who reveals he has been following Alaric. Cedric admits he recognized the shadow affliction because he once suffered from it himself, but found a temporary solution through an ancient ritual that might buy Alaric time to reach the Sunless Well. Cedric performs the binding ritual on Alaric, temporarily forcing Malachi back into a normal shadow form. Cedric reveals the full truth about Grim Hollow. It was never just a battlefield, but a ritual site where the Order of the Veil deliberately thinned the barriers between worlds, using soldiers as unwitting vessels to bring shadow entities into this realm. Alaric's father discovered this conspiracy decades ago and was silenced. The Order has been cultivating shadow entities for generations, believing they could harness their power. Cedric shows Alaric ancient texts depicting the Sunless Well as not merely a binding site, but a gateway between realms that could permanently banish Malachi. As they discuss this revelation, they're discovered by Thorn and members of the Order who attack them for the forbidden knowledge they possess. During the fight, Cedric is mortally wounded but creates a diversion, allowing Alaric to escape. With his dying breath, Cedric gives Alaric a key he claims will unlock the true power of the Sunless Well. Alaric reaches the edge of the abyssal marsh, a disorienting landscape where multiple shadows extend from every object, cast by light sources that don't exist. The temporary binding ritual is weakening, and Malachi begins to manifest again, now able to physically interact with the environment even during daylight. The marsh tests Alaric psychologically, showing him visions of alternate lives, one where he never went to war, another where he gave in to Malachi's influence and rules as a Shadow King. Alaric struggles to maintain his sense of reality as the marsh's nature bends perception. He encounters other lost souls in the marsh, some who have been wandering for decades after failing to find the Sunless Well, their own shadows long gone and independent. One such wanderer, an ancient knight named Sir Gawain, recognizes Alaric's plight and offers to guide him to the well's location, revealing he was the first knight sent to Grimhollow centuries ago and has been trapped between worlds ever since. Guided by Sir Gawain through the treacherous marsh, Alaric learns that the Sunless Well is not a physical place, but a state where reality and shadow perfectly balance. To find it, one must face their darkest self. As they near the supposed location, they're confronted by Eleanor, who appears mysteriously in the marsh. She claims she escaped Lord Edric and followed Alaric's trail. Sir Gawain immediately distrusts her, warning Alaric that the marsh creates illusions from one's deepest desires or fears. Alaric, desperate to believe Elena is real, allows her to join them. That night, Sir Gawain disappears, and Elena reveals herself to be Malachi, in disguise, having gained enough power to create completely convincing physical forms. Malachi attacks Alaric, attempting to kill his host now that it no longer needs him to maintain its connection to the physical world. During their battle, the real Elena appears with Lord Edric, who has tracked them through the marsh. The confrontation reveals that Lord Edric is actually a high-ranking member of the Order of the Veil, seeking to capture Malachi for the Order's purposes. In the chaos of their clash, Alaric falls into a bottomless chasm that Sir Gawain had warned was the true entrance to the Sunless Well. Alaric awakens in a strange realm where light exists but casts no shadows, the true Sunless Well. The environment responds to his thoughts, creating paths and structures from his memories. Sir Gawain appears, revealing this is where he has been trapped for centuries, existing between the physical world and the shadow realm. He explains that the Sunless Well is a nexus where one can either bind their shadow permanently or sever it completely. Binding requires sacrifice, severing grants freedom, but allows the shadow entity to exist independently. As they journey deeper, they encounter other shadow entities that have been severed from their hosts. including one that Elena's brother failed to bind. These entities exist in a state of half-life, neither fully in one realm nor the other. Sir Gawain leads Alaric to the central chamber where the binding ritual must be performed, but warns that Malachi will sense their intention and fight harder than ever to prevent it. In the heart of the Sunless Well, Alaric prepares for the binding ritual using Cedric's key, which reveals itself to be not a physical key, but a phrase in the ancient language of shadows. Before he can complete the preparation, Malachi manifests fully, now accompanied by Lord Edric and Order members who have found another entrance to the well. They attempt to capture Malachi using forbidden magic, believing they can harness its power. Elena appears, having followed them, and tries to help Alaric while confronting the shadow entity that once possessed her brother. A chaotic battle ensues as multiple factions fight for control. Alaric seeking to bind Malachi, the Order attempting to capture it, and Malachi itself trying to escape to the physical world permanently. During the fight, Malachi reveals its true form, a writhing mass of darkness that consumes light and casts impossible shadows. Sir Gawain sacrifices himself to hold back the Order members while Alaric and Eleanor face Malachi directly. The shadow entity offers Alaric one final temptation, freedom from the binding in exchange for Eleanor's life, revealing it has been feeding on her connection to her brother's shadow all along. Rejecting Malachi's offer, Alaric begins the binding ritual while Eleanor holds off Lord Edric. The ritual requires Alaric to face every dark thought and deed he has ever committed or contemplated. As Malachi uses these memories against him, Alaric experiences vivid flashbacks to Grim Hollow, where he now sees that his most heroic moments were influenced by Malachi's bloodlust, making him question if his renowned courage was ever truly his own. As the ritual progresses, Malachi begins to weaken but makes a desperate attempt to possess Elena instead. Alaric realizes the binding requires not just acknowledgement of darkness, but acceptance. He must recognize Malachi as part of himself rather than an external entity. In a moment of clarity, Alaric embraces his shadow both literally and figuratively, acknowledging that the darkness within him has always been his own, not something foreign from Grim Hollow. This acceptance creates a perfect balance that completes the ritual, pulling Malachi back into Alaric and binding it permanently. The process creates a shockwave that collapses part of the Sunless Well, separating Alaric and Elena from Lord Edric and his remaining men. Alaric and Elena find their way out of the collapsing Sunless Well through passages that respond to their combined will, emerging back in the abyssal marsh. Alaric's shadow is now truly his own again, moving in perfect synchronization with his body. They make the difficult journey back to civilization, avoiding Order patrols and discussing what they've learned about the nature of light and shadow. Eleanor reveals that during the ritual, she felt her brother's shadow finally find peace, suggesting that binding Malachi somehow affected other shadow entities from Grim Hollow. When they reach the edge of Oakvale, they discover that Lord Edric has declared Alaric dead, claiming he perished heroically fighting dark forces from the marsh. This gives Alaric the opportunity to start anew without the burden of his war hero status or the crimes Malachi committed in his name. Elena decides to continue researching shadow entities to ensure the Order cannot exploit them again, while Alaric must decide whether to reclaim his name and confront the Order or use his presumed death as an opportunity for a different life. 6 months later, Alaric lives under a new identity in a coastal town, far from Oakvale, working as a swordmaster for merchant ships. He maintains correspondence with Eleanor, who has infiltrated the lower ranks of the Order to monitor their activities. Alaric has learned to live with his shadow, now normal but carrying the memories of its time as Malachi, occasionally providing insights or warnings through subtle movements rather than whispers. When news reaches him that strange occurrences have begun again in Grimhollow and the Order is recruiting a new battalion of knights to secure the area, Alaric recognises the pattern beginning anew. A letter arrives from Eleanor confirming his suspicions and reporting that Lord Edric has been promoted within the Order, after claiming to have gained valuable insights from their encounter in the Sunless Well. The final scene shows Alaric watching his shadow on the wall as he packs his weapons and Cedric's remaining texts. His shadow moves in perfect unison with him, but as he turns to leave, it briefly forms the shape of a key, the same key Cedric gave him, suggesting that his journey with the shadows is not truly over, but has merely entered a new phase where he and his shadow now work as one to stop the Order from opening doors that should remain closed.